لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. My job in the next 15 or less minutes is to introduce to you what we're going to be doing today. And I'm truly excited about laying out some of the features. There's so much going on today, but I'm going to focus on 4 things because I want you to take that with you and remember it. So as I speak to you for the next 4 minutes, I will be quizzing you also. Because that's the way that I make sure that you are not falling asleep already. It's early. So the first thing I want to share with you is how, why, and really why seriously I got involved with the World Quran Convention. In my own studies of the Quran, one of the principles that I hold very dear is that the surahs of the Quran are a unique unit designed by Allah Himself. So when Allah revealed 114 surahs, it's as if He revealed 114 books. One way of looking at it is 114 books. Yes, each of those surahs can have relationships with each other. You can read an ayah in a surah and it reminds you of an ayah from another surah. That can happen. It can also be that you're reading an ayah in a surah and it connects to a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. It can also happen that you're reading an ayah in the surah and it connects to something that somebody might think about from the Bible or from Jewish scripture. It might be something that connects to world history. It might be something that connects to a phenomenon in nature, something in the skies, something in the earth. So the Quran has lots and lots of connections, but one of its fundamental requirements to be understood properly is the fact that Allah put these surahs, these ayat together in one particular surah for a reason. He didn't just take all of the ayat that are similar and put them all in one place. And He didn't just take one subject and just address it one time and nowhere else. Now this is a pretty amazing thing that, first of all, as a believer, we take the word of Allah as He says it, أُحْكِمَتْ آيَاتُهُ, that its ayat are stitched together. You know when stitching happens and you put a cloth together? It's the same imagery that Allah uses for how the ayat of a surah come together. What excites me about this convention and its legacy is that there's a focus on one surah at a time. Instead of generically saying it's a convention about the Quran or about a variety of messages from the Quran, this principle that we must respect where in the Quran did this ayah come from? What is the surah? What is the message of that surah? How are all of the ayat of the surah that Allah Himself stitched together, how are they making sense together? Before we go outside, we must go inside, because Allah put this inside first. And so just that principle becoming so important that an entire year of World Quran Hour, session after session after session, groups dedicated to studying the surah and contemplating the surah, and at the end of that entire year, an entire conference, one of its main objectives to celebrate the surah, is such a powerful concept. Because, this is the last thing I'll share, I'm going to share 4 things with you. This is the first of them in now 11 minutes. But the first of them is that we Muslims, forget about non-Muslims, Muslims tend to underestimate the surah. And what do I mean by that? There could be a surah that was revealed in Makkah, it talks about the akhirah. There's another surah revealed in Makkah, it talks about the akhirah. There's another surah, it talks about, take a guess, the akhirah. There's a few ayat in the Quran, they're talking about tawheed. They're talking about the oneness of Allah or Allah's creative power. Go to another surah, same subject. Another surah, same subject. Now, if that happened in a TV show, you would say, I've already seen this episode. If that happened in a movie, they're all the same. And when the khatib opens his mouth and says, today I'm going to talk to you about the akhirah, you're like, here we go again. I already know this. So there's a tendency to underestimate what's happening in the surah because it sounds familiar to other surahs. The problem with that, what I want you to appreciate is every surah is a unique castle built by Allah, a unique palace designed by Allah. And yes, when you walk into this palace, it has its own unique location, its unique beauty, its unique walls and windows and arches and chandeliers, all of it. And some of them remind you of another palace. Some of them connect with another, but this is its own beautiful design. It has its own significance. Another way you can think about this is, I like to give easier examples. I think most of you are probably familiar with Legos. Are you familiar with Legos? No? If not, make istighfar. But that's okay. If you give 100 pieces of Legos to a child, a creative child, and you gave the same 100 pieces to another child, and the same 100 pieces to another child, and you said, build something, would they build the same thing? No, because their creativity is different. But they're made of the same pieces. They're made of the same pieces. A painter, you can give 5 different world-class painters the same 4 colors. Here's a blank canvas, paint. Are they going to come up with the same painting? No, but at the end of it, it's just the same colors, it's the same canvas, it's the same paintbrush, but the final product is so different. The way the colors came together, the way certain things, certain shapes were emphasized over other things, isn't it? The same way you could say, this surah has akhirah, this surah has akhirah, this surah has tawheed, this surah has tawheed, but the way Allah paints them together, the way Allah takes those same elements and puts them together, every time is a unique divine painting. It is a unique divine palace. Is that clear? So that's one of our goals today. There will be multiple sessions today focusing on the unique beauty of Surah Al-Insan. Multiple scholars and intellectuals from around the world have come and are going to be presenting piece by piece some components of Surah Al-Insan, and that is the backbone of today's convention. That's the backbone, Surah Al-Insan. That was the first thing. Now I have 8 minutes for 3 more things. Okay, here's the second thing. When I first came to this convention, I was really excited at the prospect that, mashallah, Malaysia being such a great example of a successful Muslim society that is celebrating the word of Allah, I shared so many thoughts about the potential of this convention and how this can be something that impacts the entire world. It's not just something amazing that's happening here, but actually something that can impact the whole world. And I was just throwing all these ideas at Dr. Hussam and the team, and they're like, why don't you become its director? And I said, I'm the idea guy, I'm not the work guy. I could give you the ideas, but the execution is going to be a lot of work. But somehow, because Dr. Hussam's smile is so difficult to resist, he said, and then that's it, that's all. He didn't even say anything, he just smiled, and here I am. But I'm so grateful that they allowed me to share some of those ideas, and not just take those ideas, but turn those ideas into execution. And these other 3 components are actually part of that execution. So the backbone is Surah Al-Insan, but there are these other 3 pieces. Here's the first one. I wanted to make this an opportunity for people to discuss sometimes tough subjects related to the Quran and help build the way we approach the Quran as Muslims. I want to raise the level of that. So obviously many of you, if not all of you, have read a translation of the Quran, but you might find it difficult to understand sometimes, or you might have heard a tafsir of the Quran, or it may be difficult to understand sometimes, or you hear somebody talk about the Quran, a video you may have seen, a lecture, something, and you might wonder, they're saying something new about the Quran. Is that how they used to think about it before? Is this a new interpretation, or is this the original interpretation? Which one is better? Are we supposed to stick with the old one or do the new one, or what's happening here, right? So one of the discussions that's going to happen today that I'm super excited about is actually called Studying the Quran Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow. What is the relation? How was the Quran studied in the past? And what's the connection between that and how it is being studied now? Is there a connection? Is there a comparison and a contrast? And what is coming in the future? And how are Muslims supposed to think about all of 3 of these things? And what's really exciting about that is, instead of talking in theory, we've chosen a particular place in the Quran as an example so you practically can see the discussion around particular ayat. And those ayat have to do with Bani Israel and how Allah told us that they are going to have great power 2 times. And there's a lot of conversation nowadays, does that mean great power that they had 2 times in history? Or is that talking about the rise of Zionism? Is that the 2nd time? Is that what it's referring to? So, because obviously somebody 8 centuries ago, 6 centuries ago, when they were writing their tafsir, they were not thinking about the formation of the state of Israel. So how are they interpreting it? How are some people interpreting it now? What are the arguments on both sides? So we're going to look at that as a case study of studying the Quran yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Now there's two items. The first one was Surah Al-Insan. The second one is the study of the Quran yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Now the quiz begins. Be ready. I have 4 minutes, 2 more items. The third item, which I'm super excited about, is another panel discussion. And this discussion is about something that I've been worried about for some time now. Everybody here knows social media has become a new power in the world. Just like oil and gas used to be a power. Resources, material resources used to be a power. Banking and money used to be a power, and there still are. Now there's a new power that has emerged in the world, and that is social media, right? The way human beings communicate, the internet, has become a power by itself. And it's so powerful that even governments that don't like each other, like Russia and the United States, can have wars with each other without weapons, but on social media to try to disturb the American elections or do whatever else. You understand? So this is not a small thing we're talking about. It's impacted the entire world in many different ways. But one of the ways that it's disrupted the world is that there used to be a time, some of you, you all look young, but some of you are not. There was a time when you used to go to a store and rent a movie and astaghfirullah, and then come back home and put it in the VCR and then hit play. But now, entertainment became accessible. And anybody can become an entertainer. Used to be, there was the funny kid in your family that used to do a little dance in front of the cousins, and everybody used to laugh. And now, they have a TikTok page. And they have 20 million followers. Everybody became a content producer. Everybody became an entertainer. So, just like nations are obsessed with gathering oil and gas and funds and gold, now nations are now interested. The world is now interested in gathering human attention. That's the new resource, human attention. In this age of creative media, we want the world to pay attention to the Quran. Isn't that true? Which means the competition has gotten a lot tougher. That's what that means. Because human beings' attention is being taken by cats playing pianos. Human beings' attention is being taken by all funny videos. It's being taken by essays, writings, all kinds of creative stuff. So we need to have a serious conversation about how do we represent divine wisdom, the revelation that Allah has given us. How do we use it as an inspiration to produce creative media? How do we create media that looks like entertainment, but it actually in it has the message of the Quran? On the flip side, there are lots of entertainment media, cartoons, movies, TV shows, you name it, skits, comedy, that do a very good job of doing da'wah to atheism. They do a very good job doing da'wah to different kinds of social agendas. They do a very good job to promote, for example, LGBT values. And they do an excellent job. And they do it very creatively. And the amount of books, I met somebody who went to a library convention in Chicago here, and she told me that she was shocked at the number of books that have been presented at children's level, the thousands and thousands of books that have already been produced to promote LGBT values to children that are now available in the libraries. You know what that means? Creative media is being produced for a certain agenda. Well, the only way to fight that battle, you cannot bring a sword to a gunfight. If the war is happening in the world of creative media, the Muslims need to understand creative media and fight back. So there's going to be a discussion with some really esteemed panelists that have background in creative media and in the Islamic space about divine wisdom and creative media, and what Muslims can do, what Muslim creatives can do, what is the scope of it. In my last 30 seconds, one of the most exciting components of today's convention. Inspired by this creative media idea, what surah I forgot? What was item number 1? What surah are we focusing on? Oh, look at you paying attention. Okay, good. Surah Al-Insan, I know I'm over, I have 7 minutes left. This will take me 1 minute, I promise. I'll get off. One idea I had and the team had was, why don't we tell creative Muslims around the world, hey, here's an ayah from Surah Al-Insan, Inna hadaynahu sabil imma shakiran wa imma kafura. We guided him to the path. He has the choice either to be grateful or to be ungrateful. Simply speaking, that's the ayah. If you can think of a creative 3-4 page story inspired by this ayah, a creative story that could turn into a short film, that could turn into a small book, a children's book. If you have a creative idea, write us a story inspired by this ayah. And from around the world, this was very last minute, just in the last couple of months, from around the world, almost 900 stories were submitted. And my team and I, and the people here at World Quran Convention, went through all of them. Some of them very good, some of them inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And actually we selected a winner. And that winner has flown all the way here from Egypt. He's a dentist from Egypt that's flown here. And quite a remarkable, beautiful story, because I don't just want this convention to be about speakers coming to the audience. I want the audience to also be represented. The ummah needs to see, hey, he can do it while doing root canals. I can do it too. We can do this too. We can get creative also. We can contribute something too. The impact of this convention, inshallah ta'ala, is going to be global. Every one of these discussions, my hope is that it sparks new kinds of activism, new calls to action, not just across Malaysia, but across the entire Muslim world. So I ask Allah Azza wa Jal to bless this effort and to truly make it a new beginning and a renewed sense of commitment to the word of Allah and a new kind of service to the word of Allah that benefits the ummah and humanity in ways that has never happened before. Barakallahu li wa lakum. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.